Naureen Rahim, she has done her LLM in International Humanitarian Law and Human Rights from the University of Geneva, and MSS in Criminology and Criminal Justice from the University of Dhaka. She has done her postgraduate diploma in Genocide Studies as an associate at the Liberation War Museum, Bangladesh. She has been involved in organizing courses, residential schoolings, and coordinating. She is one of the key persons who are organizing this 6th International Conference. Her subject is People's Tribunal Confronting the Culture of Impunity, the contribution of Gono Adalot in Bangladesh. Naureen Rahim, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, ladies and gentlemen, to give me the floor. So my topic for today is People's Tribunal Confronting the Culture of Impunity, and I have chosen the case study of Bangladesh Gono Adalot. As we all know, a People's Tribunal is a setup by the private citizens or organizations, such as what the Global Alliance has done with the Ethics Tribunal versus a judicial tribunal set up by the governments and member states to hear and adjudicate cases. A modern-day example of a People's Human Rights Tribunal is the Russell's Tribunal, which already Dr. Tognoni has mentioned in the video earlier. The Russell Tribunal, which is also known as the International War Crimes Tribunal. The following actually presents the information on Russell Tribunal, from which the Permanent People's Tribunal evolved. And at the closing session of the Russell's Tribunal 2, the creation of 3 new institutions was announced. If you look through the global, worldwide People's Tribunals mechanisms, the first one is the International Foundation for the Rights and Liberation of Peoples, the International League of Rights and Liberation of Peoples, and the Permanent People's Tribunal. If you look into the situation of Bangladesh, in terms of the justice process in Bangladesh, several initiatives were undertaken to try the war criminals earlier, which saw very little success. Right after our independence, the very first initiative for war crime trial was taken not by the government but by the citizen groups. On December 29, 1971, only 13 days after our victory in the war, Zohir Raihan, a noted writer and filmmaker, formed a commission to investigate the killing of the intellectuals. After his disappearance on January 30, 1972, the work of the commission actually was stopped. Now, as for the Gono Adalot in Bangladesh, it all began on December 29, 1991, when a report was published in a local newspaper that Ghulam Azam, one of the chief collaborators who were considering in the paramilitary force during the war of 1971, supporting the Pakistan army. He was elected as the Amir of Jamaat-e-Islami at the party's Shura meeting, which is the highest policy-making forum of the party. Ghulam Azam was the chief collaborator of the Pakistani occupation army who planned the systematic killing of innocent Bengalis and caused rape of 2 lakh women of 1971 Liberation War. Although his citizenship was revoked under the Collaborator Acts, he had been leading the party from behind the curtain since he entered Bangladesh on July 11, 1978 with a Pakistani passport. It was only natural that people would get enraged at the audacity of Jamaat-e-Islami for publicly declaring him the Amir of the party. In immediate protest, Muktijuddha Sangshad's Dhaka Metropolitan Unit brought out a rally in Dhaka demanding his exile from the country. And then there was also heated debate in the parliament on the issue of his citizenship. Political parties and student organizations started giving statements in daily newspapers condemning the move of Jamaat. Then we have Gono Rahim, who was a Bangladeshi writer and political activist. She was popularly known for her efforts to bring those accused of committing war crimes in the Bangladesh Liberation War to trial. So she is titled as Shohid Janani, which means in English, the mother of martyrs. She was never a political figure, but she came to the political forefront, and in 1992, she tried to organize the Ghatok Dalal Nirmul Committee on January 1992, calling upon the people to counter-react anti-liberation forces. The committee was formed with 101 eminent citizens of the country. Freedom fighters, intellectuals, writers, journalists, artists, and cultural activists were among them. The committee demanded that Ghulam Azam be deported from the country by March 25 of that year. Otherwise, a Gono Adalot, which means the People's Court, would be set up on the 21st anniversary of our independence, which is March 26, where he would be tried symbolically for committing genocide and crimes against humanity in 1971. To make people aware of the evil deeds perpetrated by the collaborators in 1971, the committee, through the Gono Adalot, asking the people for the people's verdict against the traitors who committed the crimes in 1971 in collaboration with the Pakistani forces. And therefore, the Gono Adalot was a symbolic protest. And here you can see the first advertisement so that the people could reach the essence of Gono Adalot at large, and they could participate in the Gono Adalot and in the hearing as well. There comes March 26, 1992. The day will be long remembered by the nation, for on that day, Ghulam Azam was tried at Gono Adalot in front of millions of people. Although the government tried to foil the trial using the police force, at that time the BNP government was in power, the committee's efforts were successful because the people's spontaneous participation. 10 specific allegations were brought against Ghulam Azam. Killing of innocent men, women, and children starting from March 26, 1971 till 1978. Committing war crimes and crimes against humanity by collaborating with the Pakistani army to abduct and rape women. Forming Rajakar and Al-Badr, this is the paramilitary forces during 1971, instigating mass killings, carrying out armed attacks on innocent families of freedom fighters, justifying the killing of people through distorted explanation of religion, plundering and burning properties, killing of intellectuals, propagating against Bangladesh after liberation war. This is also to notify that in that hearing, 3 victims of sexual violence also gave their testimonies, which was in the history of Bangladesh the very first instance. The court didn't give him death sentence as it was not legal or any constitutional body. Rather, in its verdict, it said that Ghulam Azam should be awarded death sentence for the crimes he committed in 1971 and requested the government to take measures to try the stop war criminal. When Nirmul committees, the popularity of the movement was evident from the signature campaign that was launched on February 1. Within 50 days, more than 20 lakh signatures were collected. A great achievement of the campaign was collecting the signatures and sending it to parliament members who expressed solidarity with the movement. When Nirmul Committee's statement was published in newspapers, it was met with huge support from the public. Many organizations had expressed their solidarity with the committee, and pro-liberation political parties and progressive student organizations also expressed their support for the movement. On the first anniversary of Gono Adalot in 1993, the committee formed an 11-member investigation commission headed by poet Sufia Kamal to investigate the crimes of top war criminals and their collaborators. The commission on March 26, 1994, published the investigation report of 8 war criminals. The next year, the investigation report on another 8 war criminals were also published. The commission then requested the government to try these war criminals under the International Crimes Tribunal Act of 1973. This is Jahana Imam and all the civil society who were involved in the cause of Gono Adalot and bringing justice to the victims of 1971 genocide. The BNP government then took a hard line against this initiative and filed sedition charges against 24 of its organizers, including Jahana Imam. And Jahana Imam breathed her last due to cancer on June 26, 1994, and then the case was withdrawn by the caretaker government in 1996. The Nirmul Committee was deeply steered by her successors, especially Shahriar Kabir, with whom we are here now, who is a great credit, kept the issue of the trial of war criminals alive, even when political focus appeared to have shifted away from it. However, the death of Jahana Imam on June 26, 1994 was a great loss for the movement. Nevertheless, the committee continued its movement, took several initiatives to aware the young generation about the real history of our liberation war. It alone has published so many books on liberation war, human rights, the fascist policies of Jamaat. But unfortunately, when Jamaat came to the power, they burnt and destroyed almost all of them. They tortured thousands of activists of the committee and arrested at least 500 of its members. The Nirmul Committee formed its foreign units in several countries, through which it campaigned for the war crimes trial and gained huge support in favor of their movement. And then the much-awaited trial was started in 2010. Though the trial made by the Gono Adalot had no legal basis in law, and as an expression of public wish, it caught the imagination of the people in general and a groundswell of public opinion and started form in favor of holding war crimes trial. After the assassination of the father of the nation, Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, who was in power right after the independence of Bangladesh, and following the state support activities to distort and blur the memories of our independence struggle, Jahana Imam's Gono Adalot was the most significant initiatives that can be said to have culminated in the present trial. And also in February 2013, the nation saw a Gono Jagoron, which means a youth uprising, challenging the verdict of a convicted war criminal, Abdul Qadir Mullah, who was awarded lifetime imprisonment by the International Crimes Tribunal 2. Young people from all across the city joined the protest, demanded that he should receive the death sentence. They chanted the slogans, Jahana Imam, Imamer Rokte Rokto Amader Dhomonite, which means Jahana Imam's blood flows through our veins, as they carried Shahid Jahana Imam's portrait in their hands. 3 years later, in March, Jahana Imam's Adalot was, we can easily say that this Gono Adalot was the most significant initiative that can be said to have to expedite the trial processes and to bring justice to the Bangladeshi people. And this movement was organized at a time when, when there was no direction for the masses and generation born after the liberation war as to how to try the war criminals and resist the fascist communal forces. Through the trial of Ghulam Azam of Gono Adalot, Ekattorer Ghatok Dalal Nirmul Committee, in fact, has set a unique example before the young generation. What was the outstanding fact about this movement was it was able to bring the whole nation together to fight for a single cause, and that is the trial of war criminals. People participated in the movement to make history, to make Bangladesh a place where there is no room for war criminals and communal politics. Here you can see the Gono Jagoran in 2013, and here the slogan that I told you, it was at that time, and here you can see the mass uprising of the young people to protest, and they wanted the government to serve proper justice to the victims of 1971 Bangladesh genocide. Thank you so much.
We probably can take one or two questions if there's anybody interested in it. Please, please.
My name is Saima Khatun. I teach anthropology at the University of Jahangirnagar. It was very interesting to listen to the very important idea of people's tribunal in the absence of formal justice mechanism. So we have two, in this regard, we have two interests: prosecuting the war criminals on the one hand, on the other hand, restoring the respect and dignity of the victim women. So I was interested, as we have learning that we had been learning that the victim women, victim of sexual violence have come up in the public hearing, and they're narrating their stories in the public after a long time. Especially in Gono Adalot in 1991, the three women who has narrated their experience of sexual violence later on faced backlash and very negative reaction from their family and in the village, as we can see from that is investigated by Professor Nayanika Mukherjee, a British anthropologist. I was wondering and asking question to Teresa Lengis that what is your thought about this backlash when the two Bangladeshi victim women is narrating their experience in the public? That's really very interesting experience and is a public experience, but they have to come back to the family and in the community at the same time. So how can we, and on the one hand, it is a great success that we can make this acknowledgement in public, but they have to live a life after the hearing. So I would like to know how is your thought about it. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the question. I think on the one hand that we really do need to recognize that it's not just enough to include women that are sexual violence survivors, and we were focusing on women. There are men who, of course, are also sexual violence survivors. This is very deeply silenced. It has different causes and consequences, so I'm not talking about it now, but I don't want to somehow invisibilize their victimhood. But for women in particular, because of the gender discrimination doesn't just happen during conflict, it's part of society. And I think one of the lessons that we were learning from these informal truth-telling mechanisms, is prosecution the only way to fight impunity? Or do we as a society need to participate in what we mean by justice? Because if we have someone who pays the high cost for coming before a formal or informal, a public setting, and shares something that they then are punished for in their community through retaliation or backlash, then that justice doesn't occur in in law. That justice occurs with us as the community. So I think the suggestion is, from my perspective, we need to see as a community of human beings that we are all implicated in creating justice for each other, and that we need to, the only people who can end that stigma and end that retaliation is the community. So I think these non-traditional justice mechanisms, maybe they are complementary, or maybe even they're so different in kind that they create their own kind of justice, because we are giving survivors a safe space to be able to finally break their silence. This is my thinking after having participated in a few of these.
Can I make a special request? Since the chairman of the Ghatak Tribunal Committee and the major organizer of Gono Adalot in 1992 is present among us, can you request Shahid Kabir to make a few comments over there?
Thank you, Chairman. In fact, I'd like to first respond with this question, what she raised.
Right.
Well, that was the situation you have to understand. In 1992, the government was BNP, backed by Jamaat-e-Islami, whom were trying in the People's Court. And as a result, 24, organizers, witness of the tribunal, they were all charged for sedition.
Yeah.
And these three women, definitely when they went back to Kushtia, to their home, village, they were humiliated mostly by the Jamaat-e-Islami. That was a Jamaat-dominated area. But well, since 1999, we started honoring those victims, whom we, Bangabandhu called Birangona. Later we declared that they should be addressed as freedom fighters. They should be honored they should get the highest honor of the country. So since 1999, with Ferdowsi Priyobhashini, she was a famous sculptor. She made a public appearance in a huge, gathering. She narrated her story. And that was honor that we started since 1999. It is still continuing. As a result of a movement, the present government now declared them as freedom fighter, and they're getting reparation, 10,000 taka per month. And many, those victims, they are now coming up to tell their stories. In this tribunal also, 3 victims came from Sohagpur, and they testified against Kamru Zaman. And when I interviewed them later, they are so happy that this guy was sentenced to death. They said that, well, finally we got justice. So this is the result of the movement. And I thank to Naureen being so young, and she knows so many things about. And I'm very proud that our younger generation is carrying out our legacy. But definitely, we have to recognize that People's Tribunal set up by Bertrand Russell and Japal Satro, that inspired us to form the Gono Adalot, the People's Tribunal in Bangladesh. And in that time, Sarwar Bhai, you may remember that in Vichitra, the weekly magazine which I was editing, there was a cover story first on Jahanara Imam and later on Gono Adalot, and mentioning that this Gono Adalot is definitely inspired by the Bertrand Russell and Japal Satro's tribunal in Paris. So that was our inspiration. That inspired many, many countries, to set up such people's tribunal. So that was one thing to be noted and to be mentioned. And another important thing that about our movement, that we are trying the individuals. We are not addressing the politics of genocide. That is very, very important. Politics of genocide, even in Myanmar for the Rohingyas or in Bangladesh, it is religion. They are using religion as a tool of genocide. In Bangladesh, Jamaat-e-Islami used Islam as a tool of genocide. They said that we are killing 3 million people because they are anti-Islam, they are infidel, they are eligible to be killed. When they are raping women, they justified they are male ganima, they are people's property, and they are eligible to be raped. So these are the narratives they borrowed from Islam. It is not the real Islam. This is Maududi's interpretation of Islam, Jamaat-e-Islami's interpretation of Islam. And same thing going in Myanmar, this monk Biratu, he's a Buddhist monk. in Buddhism, there is no place for violence, there is no place for such repression, but they are using Buddhism as a tool of repression or genocide on the Rohingya people. So problem is that we are addressing individual, we are trying individual, but you remember during the Nuremberg Tribunal, it was not the individual. The Nazi party was on the dock. The high command of the Nazi parties, that the 7 organizations were tried in Nuremberg Tribunal, and 4 of them were banned, and still Nazi party is banned in Europe. Now we are campaigning to try the politics of genocide, who are carrying it like Jamaat-e-Islami and other organizations. Thank you very much.
Oh, please do, please do. Please do.
Thank you. Sharar Kabir, I don't have words to express my appreciation to you and this lady. Now, when this, all these things, tragic incidents were happening, arrest and then declaration of national enemies, basically. I was serving abroad. To be correct, I was in Geneva at that time, in Rome. And a very difficult time for me to see those things and listen to people or from people. Now, when I returned home, it didn't take me a long time to join hands with Sharar Kabir, and beginning of this century, in our government, we came to after 2008, we started a campaign slowly, but he was more vocal, but I was doing through an institute of law and international affairs. But before the tribunal was set up, we used to have regular meetings, conferences, thanks to him, and he would bring many of those prosecutors who are now sitting in the tribunal, judges and investigators. And now I'm proud to say this to you and to our friends here, through you, Mr. Chairman, that the efforts that Sharar has put in, and when I returned to Dhaka, my instrument was my institute. Through that institute, with great difficulty, because almost everyone, you will be surprised to know, all of them are freedom fighters. The big neta, they opposed it. That this institute premises shouldn't be used for discussing something which is controversial. I'll not take the names, Mr. Chairman, but I said, look, I'll pay for the auditorium, I'll pay for everything. So I do it under a different name, meaning that is when I set up the Bangladesh Heritage Foundation in order to avoid any kind of incrementing remarks. So today I'm proud to see that the tribunal is there, and since I was involved in the framing of the law, this lady is here. Basically, I was in Geneva then, and the prosecutors of the Nuremberg trial, 2 of them were alive then. They are no more. So the law is here, and the trial has started, and thankfully, the Prime Minister, Sheikh Hasina, has asked me to kind of report to her from time to time. So I kind of, unofficial aid to her on the ICTBT. So this is here. Many people do not know how it happened, but then Sharar Kabir's contribution is something that I recognize at this forum. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
We are running out of time, so I will make a very, very brief concluding remark.
Can I just say, would you mind
Sure.
Make a very, very brief response.
Sure, I may not call.
I just want to really provoke this idea because I was surprised when I was reading Helen's abstract. I think she's making a similar point, which is that maybe the problem is the law. Yesterday we had such an interesting, I can't recall his name, an interesting presentation yesterday about the root causes of genocide and questioning these concepts that we just take for granted as the solutions that may be the problem. The state, the nation state, and is the law, as Helen says in her, that the Permanent People's Tribunal is beginning to realize that the law increasingly is the guarantor of interest of the powerful, and that it will always, and I'm not saying that the tribunal is, but is it being part of that system, does it always have to exclude? What is the limits of the law, and what is it always having to exclude already without, just because of the way that it's structured? So I just wanted to kind of reiterate that for food for thought.
A very quick concluding remarks. The first one is the law is essentially common sense written in the words of law. That happens when a society is called civilized society. What Bangladesh has passed through, what Cambodia has passed through, the Rwanda has been passing, East Timor has been passing, has been in one word, has been uncivilized norms perpetrated by the state itself. That's exactly what happened in 71. That's exactly what happened in 70s in Cambodia. That exactly happened in Pinochet's time in Latin America. That when you are conquering a country, the women are the booty. And you have the right to sexually abuse them just to establish what they call the norms of Islam. That exactly happened by the conquerors in medieval times. Unfortunately, the world could not get us out of this medieval mindset to a modern civilized society. That's exactly why the genocide occurs, the sexual violences occur, mass atrocities occur, and it is time for the international community to give up their voice. Why it should be necessary that a public tribunal, the PPT, Permanent People's Tribunal, should be formed? Why cannot in all countries of the world the law takes its position? But it has been necessary. As Bangladesh experiments, our experiences, the 92 People's Court really paved the way for a judicial solution to the crisis created by Pakistan in 1971. It was the pathfinder. This has to happen. There will be other countries where such genocidal crimes are being created. That's possibly the message that Liberation War Museum and this international conference want to pass on to everybody world over. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for your patience. Joy Bangla.